Hello. So this is part 2 of our lab image editing training session. And here I will introduce and show you certain aspects of the strangely named program GIMP. It stands for GNU Image Manipulation Program, I believe. It is a graphical editing program, and it has a lot more functionality than the usual MS Paint or Paint programs, and is a free equivalent to Photoshop that I've used since my graduate school years. So I've been using this pretty steadily. I think that it's even easier to learn than Photoshop since the buttons are kind of all collected in one place and a lot of the functionality isn't really obtuse and changing wildly between versions like what happens with Adobe Photoshop. All that said, if you can do the following things shown in this video in Photoshop, if you have experience with Photoshop and have access to it in this time, feel free to just use that instead. You don't have to use GIMP if you can just use Photoshop. That said, though, other people who don't have that experience should download the GIMP program and then put it on their computer and follow along accordingly. So from the last segment, we noted that one of the types of graphs we could spit out from Excel is this one shown here. This is our symbol bar graph from the very early example in the last video. But what if we could make it better? Well, we can do that outside of Excel for sure. Let's go ahead and give that a try. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and select this whole thing here. And I'm going to copy it, which you can either do right click and copy or Control C, or a Mac person, I believe it's Command C. And then after having the GIMP program open, you can do File, Edit, Paste as, New Image. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Bam. So here we have our graph in the GIMP editing program, just like that. And so you might be wondering, well, this graph looks like it's fine. We don't need to improve it much. I would argue, though, that we could get more mileage out of all the space. For instance, there's a lot of extra white space here that really isn't telling the reader anything. And when it comes to publications, at least in this current time, we're still at the point where a lot of publications are still having a print version, and space is limited. So we want to keep in mind that restriction and try to squish down any sort of unused space as much as possible. How do we do this? Well, we could play around with a few things. In this Photoshop equivalent, one of the things you're going to see is the use of layers. So unlike old Paint or other similar simple programs, these layers can remain separate and can remain editable the whole time through. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So just to orient you first, we've got a whole menu bar of options up here. And then we also have a lot of selection buttons here. The ones that we're going to be using are the rectangular select tool. You can find out what these do by hovering over them. The scale tool, which is over here. The move tool, and also the paint can tool. Other ones that we might use include things like the text box tool and maybe the pencil tool a little bit later on. Okay. So what to do? Well, I mentioned how there's too much white space. One thing that we could do is cut and paste pieces of this stuff around. So let's go ahead and try to scrunch these bars closer together. There's no reason for them to be farther apart. I'm going to select with the select tool this span right here. And right now, it's not cutting into the actual image yet. For instance, if you grab this selection box, you can actually change the size of the box like this, but it doesn't affect the underlying image yet. If you grab this middle part, again, it kind of moves the selection box. It doesn't do anything to the image yet. You have to kind of tell it to do something by doing a thing like edit and hitting cut. What you'll notice also is Control X. You'll have other functions like copy, Control C, paste, Control V. And on the Mac, these are probably, instead of Control, it's going to be probably Command for each of these. So let's just do cut for now. We see that it cuts things out, and we have this weird checkerboard pattern. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. We're just going to ignore this glaring weird pattern for now. And I'm going to paste it back down. So that's either edit and then paste or Control V. Now, even though it's pasted back down exactly where it was, two things have happened. One is that this is now loose, and two, this is now being counted as a floating separate layer that we could mess around with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this now. You'll notice that if you haven't changed any tools here, you can actually grab this and move it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it approximately here. Now, it's kind of out of whack, right? So how do we fix it to make sure it lines up really well? Let's say we got a shaky hand. We drank a lot of coffee for some reason recently. And in order to line things up a little bit more carefully, what you can do is you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard while this is selected. So I hit the up arrow, and it goes up ever so slightly. We just want to make it so that the x-axis lines match. And then we could maybe scrunch it a little closer together before it starts overlapping. And there we go. And if we have the select tool and we click somewhere else, what happens is that this is then reintegrated into the same layer. Now we can do something a little bit different. We can do the same thing with the treatment. This is kind of out of place now. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit Control X to cut it, Control V to plop it back in place. And instead of doing this sort of pseudo layer, we can make it an actual separate layer. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say to new layer, creates a new layer and adds to the image. So now this little treatment box, this selection here, is its own entire layer. To show you some of the ideas behind layers, let's see what happens when I turn on some functions here. Firstly, we can actually hide different layers from each other. So if I hide the layer by clicking on this eye icon, it causes this treatment to disappear and reappear accordingly. If I do the same with the original bottom layer here, that whole thing disappears and reappears accordingly. And maybe to make this a little bit easier, we'll just say bar graph main layer. And that's fine. All I did was just sort of double click on that in order to be able to change the name of that. You can also lock layers. Let's say you're trying to draw on things. And the thing about drawing is that you have to select which layer you want to draw on first, otherwise it doesn't work. One example I can show is, let me flip this to black, put it on the pencil tool here. We'll talk about the pencil tool in a little bit more detail later, but for now, when I draw, and after selecting this main panel here, it draws normally. And you might be thinking, oh gosh, I just screwed up the image. Well, we can just undo that, as you do with other programs. You can either do Edit, Undo, or hit Control or Command Z, disappears. What happens if I select the pasted layer thing that only has the treatment box, though? Well, if I do that and I draw across this whole thing, I'm actually holding my mouse button down to draw. It's not doing anything. But as soon as I get close enough with it held down to here, all of a sudden it appears. So it's only affecting anything within the layer that you've selected in this layers and brushes panel over here. So we're going to unselect that now. Layers are also presented in the order that they're arranged in this panel. So this works out because these layers just sort of match up as they are. What happens if, let's say, I move this treatment layer thing somewhere else? So we're going to hit move. We're going to click on the actual treatment word, drag it over here somewhere. And let's say I then take this layer, this bottom layer, the bar graph layer, and decide to move it up in the list. You'll notice treatment disappeared because now it's hidden behind this image. So you can superimpose and hide different layers on top of each other or underneath each other. So we'll bring that back. Now to explain what the heck these checkerboard patterns are. When things are completely transparent, in order to show you that and to show that there's nothing beneath it, it provides this checkerboard pattern. So this is sort of a nothingness area. We could still fill this in so it's not just remaining transparent. We could go to the bucket tool, flip our colors around, select white, and then just click this to fill in that weird transparency. So that deals with that issue right there. And we're going to continue to improve this graph a little bit more. We can get rid of a little bit more of the white space. And I suggest you follow along and do as I'm doing here. So I selected with the selection tool, hit Control X, Control V. Again, Mac users is probably Command. And just to move it over cleanly, I'm just going to hold down the left arrow key just to slide that over cleanly. And there we go. And now it actually lines up with the treatment wording, so we don't have to rearrange that. We might want to make the y-axis title a little bit closer here. Control X, Control V, migrate it a little bit this way. Click on something else to cause it to plop back down and reintegrate with the original layer. Now, you might be thinking, well, the treatment thing is still its own separate layer, right? It doesn't have to be, though. You can actually take all the layers in an image. Let's say you don't want them separate anymore. You just want them to be part of the original thing. You can go to Layer, or sorry, you can go to Image and say Flatten Image. So this takes all the layers and reduces them to one layer. So now it's all been reintegrated. We see that the transparencies have been turned to black. That's sort of like a default setting, but you can get around that and just fill those. Oh, hold on a second there. We're going to just crop that out, actually. We'll take care of that in a little bit. Let me just see something here. Ah, yes, it's because it's connected to these bars here, that's why. So let's just worry about cropping it out in a little bit. We'll want to put this title in a proper place. So we're going to do the same cut, paste, and move it over. Maybe to about here. That seems good. Move it down a bit, and that should be okay. We can fill in this thing here with a, oh, let's just click somewhere else to get to plop the layer down. Fill in these. And now, in order to crop stuff, what we want to do is we can do this a few different ways. We could just make a selection and tell the program to crop to that. We could also crop the entire image canvas down to this whole thing. So let me show you a few of these different ways. We could do canvas size or fit canvas to layers. Right now, the canvas is fitted to the bar graph layer. We're going to just change the canvas size. It gives you a little bit of a preview window down here. So if you change the width, it'll start shrinking it down to only about here. So then when I hit resize, it'll cut off this right part. Let's say you don't want it to cut off the right part. Let's say you wanted to cut off the left part of the image. You can actually move this to determine what gets saved and what gets cut. And that's what these offset numbers are for. You could also probably trim a little bit off the bottom as well. So let's hit resize. Bam. So now we took care of that. We still have this pesky box here, and if I try to fill it, it's actually going to fill in the black bars connected to it. That's why those were disappearing before. So I'm just going to actually cut that out. I'm going to flip this out here, make the white the background color. And if I hit cut, it should behave. There we go. All right, so quick and easy solution there. All right, so this is an improved image. We could probably shrink things down a little more. Let's give it a try. We're going to do Control X, Control V, and move this up here. And then we're going to do Control X, V, move this underneath here in the middle. And then we're just going to, again, click the selecting tool over here to get that to merge with the image again. Select this whole thing. Oh, make sure we don't cut off the G there. Control X, Control V, and move this towards the center of the image. All right, looking good so far. So the bar graph by itself looks fine. It seems like things are straightforward. What if we wanted to add illustrations to really drive home the point of what's going on here? We can do that too. Let's give it a shot. I have some sample images I could add to this. For instance, this is an experiment talking about rats eating M&Ms. I happen to have a drawing of a rat eating M&Ms. So let's go ahead and try to open that up. Now, you could open it as a separate image, but notice the option open as layers. This is actually going to be more helpful. So we have open as layers. We go and find the key thing. In this case, it's going to be in my useful images. M&M intake test optim. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit hard to see what's going on. You might have the impulse to zoom out. You can do so, and that's with the zoom tool, the magnifying tool here. You can also use control, and if you have a mouse wheel or possibly using the trackpad, you can roll out to zoom out or roll in to zoom in. If not, if that doesn't work for you, you can also just kind of do this to zoom in and out. You can use the control or command button also to zoom in and out by clicking. So when you have control held down, it does the opposite of whatever's selected here. Based on what we're seeing, you might be wondering, what is this giant dotted sort of yellow and black line here? That is actually the size of the full layer of the picture that we just opened as a new layer shown here. So this seems to be a problem because most of it's out of our view. How do we fix that? Well, we can again try to fit the canvas to layers. So it'll expand the canvas now. Now this is an interesting picture, but maybe not super helpful. There's this giant box the rat's in. If we want to add this image, we maybe want to only focus on the most important aspects of the image, being the rat eating M&Ms, because that's always cute. So let's go ahead and inside this new layer, we are going to just select that specific part of the image. Now we could do a cut and paste, but I think it might just be easier if we just go to layer and then crop to selection. Now just crops down to that. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now this rat is too big for our bar graph. It's pretty darn huge. We want to do something about that. We can move this layer into place. It's not really going to be that helpful though, so we want to shrink it down. So you could do this two ways. One way is to decide to select the whole layer. You can do a right click and then edit, select all. You can also have the layer selected over here and then select all, and then it selects only all of that layer, not the other layers of the image. And you could scale it up and down. So there's a scalar tool here. Now there are two ways that we could scale this. We could use the scalar tool, or in the layer menu, we could also scale the layer itself. Both are going to kind of have the same result, but the scale tool, after selecting something, has a little bit more flexibility and options to it. So we're going to use that here. So I'm just going to click on the rat image just once. You could actually scale it manually by clicking and dragging right now, but you'll notice the window pops up. So I usually just do a single click. We're just going to reset just to get this window to pop up. And although you could do it manually to try to resize it as you'd like, you can also mess around with the numbers here. So width in pixels, height in pixels, because it says px here. You see this weird chain icon? This means that anytime that you change the width, it automatically tries to compensate by changing the height, so you don't end up stretching the image out. Otherwise, what will happen is if these aren't linked together, as the chain icon, what will happen is we get it squished this way, and we get it stretched this way, and that's not really any good. So we're going to hit reset. We're going to link these two together. And there's also other things you can select in here. So it says pixels here. we do the drop-down menu, the thing that I prefer the most is percent, because that is a lot more intuitive. It's easier to follow. So by estimate, maybe in order for it to fit into this new graph window, maybe into this white space here, the image probably needs to be about 20% the size of what it was before. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like by cranking down this little down button over here. And it seems like around 20% does it. So I'm just going to select 26 here just to see how it looks. And you'll notice that now this is actually a new floating selection rather than part of the original layer. You could get it to just plop into this layer and we can go from there, but you can also have it become its own new layer. This might be easier to do because then you don't have to figure out the cropping situation. So we're going to just do to new layer. And then we have the old layer here, and I'm going to tell that to go away. So let me just show you how they are separate layers now. I'm going to do the move tool. I'm going to click on this, and it actually is separate now. So I'm just going to get rid of this white panel. We don't really need it. So you can right click and then delete the layer here. Additionally, I believe that's an option, yeah, in the layer drop-down menu as well. Right clicking is not an option. All right, let's zoom in a little more to get a closer look at this. All right, so this is decent. Let's try to move this into place. All right, and done. No, doesn't look done. This doesn't look right. So we see that this is already overlapping elements of the image that we want to show through. This might be a problem. How do we make this transparent when it didn't start out that way? Well, there are a few ways that we could play around with doing this. One of the messier ways that won't get us really what we want here, but I'll demonstrate for just example purposes, is using this opacity thing. So we have our layer selected, and then when we bring down opacity, 100% means that it is solid color. It's not see-through at all. 0 means that it's completely see-through, that you can't actually see it. What happens when we turn it down to 50? Well, we see that it fades and we see through whatever's behind it. Not exactly ideal, though. It's not quite what we want. Let's say we want it to work like some things do in PowerPoint, where stuff that's outside the image is see-through. Well, we could kind of mess around with another function here, where we say, let's just select this layer first here, and then colors, color to alpha. That weird checkerboard thing that I said was the transparency stuff, that is also called the alpha channel in this program and in other similar types of programs. So let's hit color to alpha. Let's see what we get. So from white, this is just a white block to alpha. We could select other colors as well. For instance, if I wanted to do black to alpha, then anything that's a dark black color gets faded out. The picture is made of some grays, so the image is still kind of there. Let's just do this quickly to see what happens. Hit OK, and yeah, actually it kind of fades out all of the black color entirely. So instead, we'll do that to white, the way that we were planning to do it. So we'll just kind of select this. We want this at full white. All right. Hit OK. Hit OK. And there, now these elements in the bar graph can actually seep through. If we wanted to resize this so the fit isn't so tight, we could also do that. I'm not going to bother doing that. I think we've tweaked this image enough. So we're done with that part. All right, let's zoom out and take a look at it. That's good. This is pretty good. Maybe we want to crop this layer down some more. So let's just do a rectangular selection box. We'll select the background layer again. And it'll just draw it around this whole thing. And then tell the program, hey, can you like crop this layer down to the selection again? There we go. So we got rid of all the excess stuff there. And again, this background indicates that this stuff would be transparent and that there's nothing behind it, not even color. So the checkerboard pattern is supposed to be representing the absence of color across all things. Okay, so now let's say we want to add another image that's a little bit more interesting and detailed. And this is part of the session where I'll show a little bit about some of the other features that we have here. So let's open up another image. We'll go open as layers and rat with opto implant. So we had a big rat before. This one is colossal by comparison. Let's zoom out and see how big we're talking. That's pretty big. Doesn't even fit in the image. So let's try to fix this again before we try to rescale it, because it'll only rescale what we see and not the other stuff that we can't see. We're going to go to image and then fit canvas to layers. So now we have this very big rat image. We don't need the full image here. We're going to put this on top, by the way, just so we don't have the other stuff peeking through. And in case we accidentally bump into anything, we're just going to lock these so that we don't affect those here. I don't believe I showed the layer locking, by the way, so let me just go ahead and do that right now. Let's say we only have this bar graph layer visual here. If I click the locking button, it prevents us from doing anything to that layer aside from moving it. So I can draw on it normally when I select the layer and then do this. But if I lock it, this shouldn't stick. Locking function did not work the way it was supposed to. That's really bizarre. Huh. Well, we'll ignore the locking function for now. For some reason, it didn't work for me. So much for examples. Alrighty, we'll turn these back on. And, ooh, hello. One moment. Just going to go back. All right. Zoom back out. Okay. So we know we don't need this whole rat image. We could probably crop this to a specific area that we want to view here. Now, I mentioned how this experiment, when I was talking about the first bar graph example with the Excel video, this experiment involved lasers going into the rat brain. And I did mean that literally. We see little laser connectors that do go into this rat's brain. So let's go ahead and crop it just to the most important part of the image, which I would say is this here, and then maybe the rat's face, giving us that weird stare that they do. Alrighty. And then layer, crop to selection. I was not selecting the correct layer again. So let's go up here. And then layer, crop to selection. Hopefully I didn't affect the other one below it. Hold on one second. Yes, the other one seems to be fine. All right. So now we know this is still pretty huge. We want it to be shrunken down a ton. So let's go ahead and try to use the layer scaling button instead. So layer, scale layer, and it's on percent already, so that's good. It probably needs to be like 10% of its normal size. So let's shrink it down to about that. Let's scale, and that actually almost fits to where I want to put it. So we'll zoom in then. We'll use the move tool to plot this where I want to put it. And now this almost fits into this bar here. I still need to squish it down a little bit more. So we can just select all for this layer and then try to retool it. Let me just position it here. This will be important because it scales in the direction of this from bottom right corner to top left corner. So let's give that a try. Get the scaler tool, click it once, and then see how it looks when we shrink it down a little more so that it just fits inside the bar. scale. And again, we'll just post this to a new layer, get rid of the old layer that we're not going to use, right click, delete, or go to the layer drop-down menu. And there we go. So that's to give us the impression that, oh yeah, rat receives laser to the brain in this case. And for contrast, I don't have an image of rat not receiving laser. It's kind of hard to show the absence of things. So I'm just going to use the text function here for the first time. And so when you draw a selection box, that's where the text is going to go, and gives us a default text size, which is 18 pixels in height. You can change it to points. You can change it to other metrics. It doesn't really matter unless you're coming up with consistent numbers across any images you're using. And it's going to use the color as shown in this left panel window here. So I'm going to type in no laser. And that's all well and good. Let's say I want it to be a little bit of a thinner thing, though. It actually automatically squishes things down. It tries to wrap text, in other words. And if you wanted it to be different alignments, you could do left align, right align, center align, justified, which is really weird. So we're going to stick with center align. That looks prettier. And let's say I wanted to change the text size. It's not doing anything right now because I haven't selected the text here. I'm just going to take my mouse, click, and then drag over this thing. Now we can blow up the text size or shrink it accordingly. We'll just keep it at 18 though for now because this seems to fit pretty well. All right, we'll hit the move tool. Now this layer, the text is part of the layer, but outside of the text, there is no background. So let me show you what I mean here. See, all the stuff that is not the actual letters is see-through. And so it's actually hard to move text layers because you have to make sure you're clicking on the actual lettering. Otherwise, if you try to click anywhere else, let me show you what happens. If I click here in the gray area, it actually moves whatever is underneath. Super obnoxious, just something to watch out for. And I think this is true of Photoshop as well. So it's not something that's particularly problematic to just this program. Okay, so we have that figured out now. And one other thing I'm going to show you in this image and then in a separate image is color balancing. So you can mess around with colors in a lot of different ways. We're going to zoom in real quick. I'll show you what I mean here. Let's select the rat face layer here. Now you can go, we're going to select it just to make sure it's select all on that layer. You can go from the layers dialog to the channels dialog. The way images are set up is RGB, red, green, blue. And you can turn these colors on and off as well as adjust them. So let's say you want to get rid of all the red from the image. You don't like how that albino rat's staring at you with its red eye. Unfortunately, this is applied to the entire image, so we can see that that wasn't super helpful. But it does get rid of all the red in the image, or all the green if we hide that. This is only hiding it, though. It doesn't remove it outright. So it comes back as soon as we click the eye icon again. And then we also have alpha here, which I mentioned is the same thing as transparency. If we get rid of that, we'll actually get it back to alpha versus not. All right, so that's all fun, but doesn't really help us with anything. What else can we do with this? Well, I have this thing selected. We can go to colors. There are a lot of options here. We're not going to play around with too many in this image. In the next image, I'll show some though. The one I like to use the most is color curves. So let's play around with it. Right now, it's just the general gray value that is selected where it says channel value. So if we click on this curve and then we drag it around, it actually acts like a brightness and contrast all in one. What's happening is that an image has different colors that are different shades, right? So if it was all gray, then there are a whole bunch of different shades of gray. And that's spread across, as we can see, these X and Y axes. So the X axis is the way that they are currently. The y-axis represents where you want it to be, whether you want it to be brighter, like make those colors a shade lighter than they normally are, or make them a shade darker than they normally are. So if we just take what are currently the brightest colors of the image and click here and drag them up, it just makes all the whites whiter and the lighter color blues brighter and all that. It doesn't really change the black background though. Let's say we clicked over here. So you notice how it also sets these points. If you want to have it go back, you can always just hit reset. Let's say we go down here where we have the darkest colors on the x-axis, and I click and I pull this up. You see that it starts to fade out some of the background. It does seem to fade the rest of the image, but you can see that the whole curve's going up. You can create a new point over here and drag it back down to get those colors to come back a bit. But anything that's a darker color is basically brightened in a weird sort of way. Now for a little bit more of the fun part. You can go to the separate color channels and mess around with those individually and alter their colors more permanently. So we go to the red channel, and we can brighten certain reds that are on the brighter end of the spectrum. We can darken other reds that are on the darker end of the spectrum. So if I click this up, anything in the image that has a component of red, which includes whites, because white is a combination of all colors. Anything that's red gets a brighter red. If I'm to drag it in the middle of the image, for instance, it looks like the red's getting really, really bright. The rat's getting angry looking now. It's glowing red. Not super helpful for our purposes, but this is just for example. You can do the same thing with green, get a radioactive rat. I'm gonna reset that one. Or blue, and similarly get a glowing rat in that way. Why am I showing you this? Well, the next image, it'll make a lot more sense. So we're just gonna cancel out of this. We're not gonna affect those colors. We're instead gonna just zoom out, and since I just made this from scratch, but also practiced making this earlier, we can compare this side by side with the one that I made. So improved, simple bar graph, shrink this down, and sorry, get this to show back up. And these look pretty darn similar. They came out almost identical. So it shows that this has been consistent and can be repeated rather easily. Alrighty. Well, what do we do with this now that we're done? Well, first, what we want to do is we have actually this entire huge canvas here. And sometimes when you save an image, it'll actually save all this empty space around it too, making an unnecessarily large image file. So what do? Well, we go back to one of the same functions we used before. We go to Image, Fit Canvas to Layers. And so right now we have some sort of layer that is oversized. That seems to be this one here. What do we have on this layer? If I delete it, do we lose anything? Yep, that was the rat's layer. So we didn't resize that down to where it should have been. For this one, we have to crop it down so that it fits around the rat. Let's see what happens when we go and do a crop layer, auto crop layer. Then we zoom down. Now this layer size is only as big as the width of any time there's a colored pixel here. Basically got rid of all the whites, and it will do the same thing with solid black as well. So auto cropping is a useful function. You just want to double check it to make sure it doesn't crop out anything that you don't want. Then we got this other huge layer, and that's where this rat face is residing. And we want to bring that down in as well. So we're going to just go to Layer, Auto Crop Layer. We still got something else that's really big. Let's do Layer, Auto Crop Layer. No. I think at this point now the canvas is just oversized. So let's see if we can't fix that now. Fit canvas to layers. There we go. All right, so saving. If you save normally, like save or save as, it will save it as one of these things called an XCF file. So this is something that can be opened in the GIMP program. I believe Photoshop should be able to open these as well, and vice versa. Photoshop files should be openable in GIMP. But outside of GIMP, if you don't have that program or Photoshop, it's not super useful. So instead, we're not going to just save it. I do recommend saving it so it does retain all these separate layers. And if you want to edit it later, you have an XCF file that's ready to use. But we're going to click out of that since I already saved it. We're going to go to export. Export the image to various file formats such as PNG or JPEG, something that we're all a lot more familiar with. So let's take a look. It says untitled PNG. I already have a version of it, improved simple bar graph using GIMP PNG. Now, it doesn't have to be saved as a PNG file, but I do recommend saving it anytime that you're going to put an image, let's say in Google Docs. Google Docs is a little fussy and it tends to only like PNG files. So I suggest saving it in that format. If you want images that have a brighter array of colors or higher resolution and things like that, JPEGs and TIFF files are more up your alley. Even BMP bitmap files might work. When you go to all export images, this is sort of showing you all the other options. There's a dizzying array of options that we're not really going to concern ourselves with here. We'll just stick with PNG, and then you'll hit export, and that'll be done. I don't need to hit export, so there you go. When you're saving or exporting things, do make sure you keep track of what folder they're going in. I know that people tend to lose things when they're in the fray of trying things out and figuring out where it went on their computer. So do try to make sure that's going to an appropriate folder. That said, we can close this, and it doesn't close the whole program. If we just close this, it'll ask, oh, do you want to save changes? And if you didn't save it as an XCF file, it'll always ask this, even if you exported it as a PNG or JPEG or whatever. I'm just going to close without saving because I've got nothing to lose here. Okay, we can close this other thing behind it. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you with the color curves and some other functions is this next part here. So GIMP is still open, and we're going to open 3 image files that I've put on the Moodle page in a folder with the other images. For me, I'll just have to dig them out here. So we have these things that say sample slide, DAPI, GFP, RFP. G, in this case, is for green fluorescent protein. R is for red fluorescent protein. And then DAPI is a special type of stain. Just remember that it's supposed to be blue. That's all we'll concern ourselves with right now. So I'll do a batch select. You can either click and drag it, or you can click one and then hold shift and then click down to the end of that. Or you could even do a sort of patchwork selection where you click and then hold control and then click other things or deselect them. So that's fun. We're going to just select all these 3 things. I'm going to just hit enter to open them. Now we have these 3 image files here. They don't really look like much, and let me give you a little background about where these came from. My colleague has a microscope that looks at fluorescence from some biological samples. And what that means is that under special lighting, the sample will give off certain colors back to the microscope. And if you put on different lights, the sample might give back different colors, depending on what the sample is stained with. The microscope can actually separate out these colors. So you don't need to use fancy software to separate out. Instead, they kind of come separated out already based on how that whole process works. So we have different sort of channels on the microscope. We have a blue channel, we have a green channel, and a red channel. And it saves all these images separately in accordance with their channels. So that's why we have 3 images. They represent the 3 channels that are the same image, but just looking at different color sets on that image. But let's say we want to stitch it back into some useful colorized image. Well, let's give that a try. First, though, before I get to that, you'll notice it says index color, one layer. So that's where it's a color and it shades from black to the extreme of that color. So this is supposed to be blue. It's from black to the brightest shade of blue. This one's black to the brightest shade of green. All these images are dim, though, and we'll fix that in a little bit. But first, we'll try to compose them into a composite picture of multiple colors rather than just their weird separated parts. Let's go to the colors menu. We scroll down and it says components, and you can compose them, create an image using multiple gray images as color channels. You notice that this option can't really be selected, but a key pointer there is it says gray images. The problem is that these images are index color, they're not in gray or grayscale. You can change the type of the image by simply going to image and then mode, and you have these different types. So index color is just, again, from black to whatever the extreme of that one color is. Grayscale is exactly how it sounds. And RGB is a full color image. We're going to convert each of these images to grayscale. So we have the blue becomes grayscale, doesn't look like anything's changed. Let's take this green one, image, mode, grayscale. Yeah, kind of looks gray now, although it's pretty faint. The red image is probably the more striking one of the three. Image, mode, grayscale, kind of turns really dim. Again, we'll fix that dimness later. Now we can compose all the colors together. We go to colors menu, components, compose. Let me stretch this out so we can see what we're looking at here. Okay, so I mentioned R is for red, RFP. G is for green. We select GFP. And I mentioned before, DAPI is just blue stuff. So it's DAPI. So now each of these are going to be, each of these images are going to be delegated to their respective color channels. Those channels being very similar to this panel over here where it says channels dialog. We're going to hit OK. Let it do its thing. It's going to create a new image that is multiple colors. You see that it says RGB color, so this is a full color image. Certainly doesn't look like it, though. It leaves a lot to be desired. How can we fix this? Well, we use the color curves function, which didn't seem that useful before, but might be way more useful right now. Let's give it a shot. Curves. We'll first try blue. So what we could do is, before we try any of this, let's close this out for a second. Since this is a multiple color image, if some colors get brightened up a lot, it might be hard to see the differences you're making when you're messing around with other colors. So we're going to just go to the channels dialog up here next to the layers. We're going to hide the other colors so they don't interfere with how we're doing this. So only thing that's available right now is blue. So I clicked off the eye icons there. I'm going to do curves. And for the channel, we're going to set blue. Now when we mess around with the curve, things should start to appear. I pull it out, I try to increase most of it out and up. And finally, stuff is starting to appear once I stretch it out almost to the extreme up here. So it might not help that much until I basically pull it all the way to the left, but things start popping out. Then I start pulling it up, and that's looking a lot better. Okay, we'll stick with that. Other things won't be so much of an extreme shift, but this is kind of what we're working with here. So I'm going to hit OK. So that's now applied to the blue portion of the image. What we're going to do, though, is hide this and then pull up green instead. Go back to curves, color curves. Select the green instead. We're going to pull this out. And it'll automatically update as long as you have preview checked here. So if nothing's really happening, make sure that preview is checked and not unchecked. We can see a lot more of a stark difference as we pull this out, that the greens get brighter and brighter. If I pull it up all the way to the top here, this is clearly too much. We don't want that. So we want to pull it back down to something a little bit more medium, something that really makes the edges pop without drowning out an excess green. So that's pretty good, I would say, right there. Now, we also want to get rid of some of the green hazy nature of the black color. We want the black to really contrast with the green. So we want to drop out some of the background slight greening of what should be solid black. We can click on this curve again. We have this dot up here. We're going to leave that alone. We're going to click somewhere sort of halfway down, and we're going to drag that a little closer to the edge here and down. So you'll notice as I'm messing around with this, it's actually having very dramatic effects, even though it's a very small, slight nudge of my mouse cursor. But that's pretty good right there. So I'm going to just drop that. Hit OK. We're good there. Let's blink out green, blink on red. Can't really see it. Let's fix that. Curves, red. Let's punch it up. There it is. And we'll make it pop a little bit more. And I think that the black can be subdued a little bit more from the background here. So let's go ahead and do that if it will let me. Oop. Sometimes it'll do this where it kind of kludges a little bit. We'll just hit reset to try to fix that. We'll put one point there. We're going to put another point down over here, just so we could have a little bit better control. So we'll drag this over, and then we'll pull this aside a little bit more. And that's good. All right, so that image pops pretty well too. So we're going to hit OK. All right, now let's turn on all of our channels and see how it turned out. That looks a lot better than any of the originals looked. So let's go ahead and zoom in. Just going to hit Control and mouse wheel up, or you can use the magnifying lens option there. So the image is a little hazy, but we see blue, and then it's red surrounding it, and then green outside of that. So now we kind of have a better idea that this is some sort of sample of what appears to be cells. So the blue is for the nucleus of the cell. The red is for the cytoplasm, the goop within the cell. And the green is for the cytoskeleton, the outside of the cell that maintains its shape. Alrighty, so that's pretty helpful. But let's say we want to do a little bit more with this. I'm going to kind of play around with this. It's not going to be super clean, but I'll just showcase a few more features. Let's say I want to draw and indicate certain things. You can do it in a messy way. I'm going to just choose what color white for the drawing part. And we're going to click on the pencil tool. Now, in the pencil tool, you'll notice that it gives you a bunch of options. Opacity, again, that's just to make whatever you're drawing a solid color versus a see-through color. The aspect ratio and angle we won't really care about, but if you're drawing with like a paintbrush shape, the angle will just cause that shape to rotate and then you draw with that shape. Size, in this case, is important. So if I crank up the size, you'll notice that the size of the drawing area is huge. So we're going to turn that down a lot. And I believe this is in pixel widths. We're going to turn this down to like 5 maybe. And it's pretty tiny. I'm going to zoom in on a particular cell to draw things next to. So let me try it out here. Okay, not bad. Drawing a kind of messy arrow. Not great for publication, but good for example purposes. And it's pointing to the cell nucleus. I'm going to draw another arrow pointing to that cytoplasm, and yet another arrow pointing to that green skeleton thing. And then we could add labels. So we'll use the text labeler, and we'll go nucleus. You'll notice that the font is super tiny. Let's just select the whole font and crank that size up to something a little bit more respectable. We'll make it about 65 or something. And maybe if we want consistency, we should take note of that number so we crank up the other font sizes we're about to make as well. So that's good. We create another box and we say this is cytoplasm. And I'm going to just do Shift and then Home to select the whole thing as a shortcut key thing. and crank that up to about 65, like we did with the other one. And once more over here, oh, kind of create a small box. You can create a larger version there. Cytoskeleton. Boost that size up. And you'll notice that it's kind of rolling off of the box that we drew, so we could expand the box before it plops it down. You notice that the text is actually all separate layers, so that ends up being particularly convenient for us as well. So now we'll just kind of click that off, and this is okay, but maybe we want people to know exactly what we're pointing at here. Maybe we want to color code this. You could take a paint can and fill it in with colors of your choice letter by letter, but there is an easier way to go about this. Let's select the nucleus word here. So I selected the layer for nucleus. I'm going to just sort of right click on the word and make sure it's selected by hitting select all. And I'm going to do colors, colorify. And we can turn nucleus bright cyan kind of color blue. Let's do that. That way we know it's corresponding to the blue color in the nucleus. Let's try cytoplasm next. And I think we can do this without having to select the whole layer. Let's try that. Cytoplasm, we're going to make that more of an angry looking red. That's good. And then cytoskeleton, I'll select in the layers menu, colors, colorify. And we're going to make that more of a greenish color. There we go. So that's how we can take some very biological images and really make them pop or add annotations to them or other such things. If you want to have a more clean way of doing that, there are other tools at your disposal in this program. I'm not going to really look at those right now, but there are plenty of options and probably a lot of online resources to go into that stuff. For now, that just demonstrates what we can do in this GIMP program or otherwise Photoshop, and the importance of layers and resizing stuff and all the goodness.